Okay. Howard Solomon.
Here.
Everybody could rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We start tonight with public participation and recognition. This is public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Criticism of individuals is not in order. Board committee reports and correspondence.
Yeah, I could say something about the insurance committee. They had a meeting and things are going very well with open enrollment and so on. And apparently, according to DLR, we've gotten some good numbers back. And so just in general, things are moving forward quite well.
Anybody else?
Oh, I did remember something. Yeah, you know what? Since we do have our food service vendor here, I do want to tell you that kids have brought up that they're very excited about the strawberry milk that they have been receiving. So they wanted me, believe it or not, we get emails from children too. So they were excited about the strawberry milk option. Okay, so that's something that they want to see more. Or for it to not go away.
We have it this whole week. We celebrate National School Breakfast Week. So I've also been hearing positive things, so I'll probably bring it back in a couple of months as well.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Val. Okay, next we have presentations. ECO, School District 428 financial projections, and this is an informational item.
And there were some people that weren't happy that the projector here. But we'll go through this. I won't not say fairly quickly, but there's a lot of information, but a lot of it's somewhat repetitive. So from what we typically do each year. So it's that time of the year where we are starting to look at our fiscal 19-20 budget, as well as looking forward for the next 5 years, looking at some assumptions in our financial projections. So what we utilize in order to develop our projections is a system called Pipecast. It used to be PMA, and now it's Forecast 5, which falls under this umbrella called Pipecast. What we input into this model is 5 years of audited financial statements. We also have our current fiscal year 19 budget and some detailed general ledger information. We put in our tax levy rates and extensions, EAD information. We also incorporate our district revenue and expenditure assumptions. And also FFAC reviews these projections and assumptions. They looked at it at the December 12th meeting and also at the February 13th meeting. So just really quickly here, I thought this was a good visual to look at where our enrollment has been over the last 10 years. So if you can, obviously it's increased, and it's 693 students since the 08-09 school year. So that's almost about a 12% increase in enrollment over that period of time. So it's kind of interesting because a lot of districts were seeing the opposite, because basically 08-09 was when the Great Recession hit, and there were not a lot of new rooftops. We've kind of seen, and so they were really seeing enrollment either flattening or dropping, and we are seeing it going up. So it's an interesting phenomenon. Here's just a reminder of where we're at with our operating budget and our revenue pie chart here. The largest source of our revenue are our local sources, which are property taxes, student fees, donations, and our corporate personal property tax that we get from the state. The next largest source is our state sources, which the big portion of that is our evidence-based funding, which used to be our general state aid. And then our federal sources is the next largest piece before the, well, actually the smallest piece, which is about 6% of our total. Here, a big component of our local revenue base are our tax-based assumptions. And this is the consumer price index, because that's a big indicator of how much additional dollars that we can ask from the county clerk for our property taxes. So you can see the CPI has really kind of gone all over the place. This is basically a 14-year history 07, 08, we're at 3.4, then it was up and down. We had a really low year in 10, 11, and then a lot of spikes up and down. Kind of leveling out here, we actually had 2 back-to-back years at the same rate, 2.1%, coming off of some fairly low CPIs. And then the most current that we have from last calendar year would be, which is 2018, is 1.9%. And that will affect our, and I know it's kind of hard to see here, it was published back in December of 18, so this last calendar year, and it affects our 2019 tax levy, which affects our 2021 budget year. So just kind of the progression of what that looks like. Another big component of the tax-based assumptions is, well, again, the consumer price index, I'm sorry. And then here we're looking at, and here's a quick history we just saw. And what we're projecting in our assumptions is a 1.8% for the next 4 years after that. The average is about 1.5 over the last 5 years, although the most current ones seem to be leveling out a little higher, so 1.8 is a pretty decent assumption to use. And actually, we were using that same assumption prior, so we came pretty close to it. And you can see up here the revenue sensitivity. So for every 1% increase or decrease in that CPI is potentially more or less $523,000. The next piece here for the tax base is our existing EAV, or equalized assessed value, so the value of the property within the school district boundaries. Here's a short history from 14 to 17. We were down here in 14, and then we're starting to go up. Just the economy getting better and property values going up as well. For the 2018 levy year, we're at about a 4.1% increase. And again, that's still an estimate. We won't know that real number actually fairly soon. Sometime in March or early April, we'll get that number. And then what we're projecting for future years is 1.5 increases. We feel that's fairly conservative considering we're on a little of an upswing here, but we still want to remain conservative with that number. Next piece of the property tax assumptions is our new EAV growth, and that's really how much new construction and or new dollars that are in that will be added to our existing EAV. So you can see here from 2013 to 2018, we had a jump here in 2017. For the estimate for the 2018 levy year is about 2.6 million. Again, we'll know that fairly soon what that is. For the 2019 tax levy year, we did have DeKalb TIF 2 just expire. So we will get access to about $12 million more in EAV for that 2019 year. Then we're projecting $2.5 million for the years going forward. You can see this big spike in 2022. Right now, that's when DeKalb TIF 1 expires, the central area TIF. Right now, the city council is contemplating expiring that TIF a year early, but right now it's still expiring in 2021, and then we get access to it in 2022. So this might move over a year earlier, so we get access to that additional EAV. So up here, the revenue sensitivity of new property or new growth. So for every $1 million, it's plus or minus $70,000 in terms of tax dollars. And then just a EAV analysis in totality where we've been. You can see here 2013 where we were at. Probably our low point, 2014. Pretty much in 2018 when property values started to drop, it was sort of steady and then it really dropped, hitting this low point here, and now it's starting to increase a little here. Again, this is an estimate, and then incorporating those other assumptions we just looked at, this is what we're projecting the total EAV to look like over the next 5 years. And this is really just a chart showing all the school districts within DeKalb County. And really, it really just shows that everybody experiences those decreases the same time that we did. And also others they're experiencing increases, although some different than others. Here is Sycamore, there is 7.2%. We're at about a 5.4%. So it just depends on where you're at in the county in terms of what that looks like. But overall, those numbers are looking better. So other revenue assumptions, local revenue assumptions, we have our corporate personal property replacement tax, which is about $1.2 million per year. We have TIF surplus dollars from TIF 1. We received, where we budgeted in 19 is $1.4 million. In actually fiscal 18, we received about 1.6 million, so we adjusted the estimate up a little bit to about 1.5 million for that. And we will receive those dollars until the 2022 fiscal year unless they do expire that temporarily by a year. So that'll move up 1 year. And then all other local revenues were remaining flat at fiscal year 19. A big component of our state revenue is the state school funding formula, so the evidence-based funding, or EBF. And I've shown this slide before, so basically the EBF funding is a new formula that replaced general state aid, and it's based on evidence-based practices that are shown to enhance student achievement in the classroom. Each district is treated differently, and an adequacy target is calculated for each district based on their student populations. And districts are placed in one of 4 tiers, 1 being the farthest away from adequacy and 4 being above adequacy. And then new dollars go to the neediest districts first, that are farther away from the target. So for District 428, this is the progression of our adequacy, of where we've been in terms of the evidence-based funding since it was instituted. For fiscal year 18-19, we are at 50% of adequacy, which puts us in tier 1, so considered the neediest district or needy district to get additional dollars. So in 16-17, when general state aid was still in existence, this is what we received in general state aid, about $20 million. When the evidence-based funding was put into place, it took all these other programs and lumped them together to come up with this number, the 22.8 million, which was considered our initial base funding minimum for 17-18, the new fiscal year. Then in 17-18, pretty much by the end of 17-18, I think it wasn't until May, we received an additional $2.8 million from the funding because it took the state that long to do all those calculations for all the school districts. There's 800 plus school districts, so it was quite a task. And all school districts are interrelated now. So when one changes, it changes everybody else. So for fiscal year 18-19, the process is you get your base funding minimum, which was your EBF from the prior year, and then we received an additional 2.9 million in tier 1 allocation. So our fiscal year 18-19 evidence-based funding total is 28,666,000. So that's what we're receiving right now, evidence-based funding. So our revenue assumptions for other state revenue is that we're keeping everything flat. And that's really what we've done in the past. We like to revenue, we are fairly conservative in what that looks like, expenditures as well. Just a reminder here, we did not receive 1.4 million from the state in categorical and reimbursement payments from 17-18 at the end of the fiscal year. And so those were not included in those totals. We have received all those funds since, so those will be included in our 18-19 totals for state funding. We're being conservative there as well. We were, again, in the past, we have received those dollars, but since they had not showed up, we did not like to recognize that revenue. And then federal revenue, we're keeping at projected levels, like we had in fiscal 19, and keeping those flat. So this is a result of from the revenue projections of the baseline all the assumptions I just went through. So here's our budget. So if you look through here, we have 2020, 21, and going out to 24. Kind of tough to look out to these 3 years because it's fairly far out, but really we focus on 20 and 21. And then, but it's always good to look that far out just to see how these assumptions affect everything. So here, if you look at our total revenue, and this is operating revenue for 19, we're at about 92 million, and we go up to 93, 95, and so on. So you can see the increase in revenue over the next 5 years. Now we're looking at expenditures. Just a reminder of our expenditure pie chart here. We have about 87 million in operating expenditures budgeted for 18-19. Biggest portion is salaries and benefits, which is typical for most districts. Purchase services is our next biggest one, which is our for student contract, earmark, our insurance, those types of things. Next here is our tuition. And that also includes special education tuition for outplaced students. We have supplies and materials, and then we have capital outlay. So that's really where we're spending our dollars. When we're looking at our assumptions for expenditures, for salaries, we take a look at all our collective bargaining agreements and contracts, and we fold those into the analysis. We also use CPI increases for our unaffiliated staff. We do have contracts that are going to be expiring over the next few years. CTA actually this year, and then we have 2 going off the year after that. GFSA we just finished negotiating, so we just pretty much leave everything level based on current contracts so we can get an idea of what those salary increases look like. Health benefits, we've got 5% annual increases put in the assumptions, although for our 2019 calendar year, we had a 0% increase. Awesome. Any 1% change in that assumption is about $85,000. And then purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, and other, we either tie it to CPI. Special education, we usually put a barometer in there about 4.5% annual increases. And then our transportation contract, we have at 3.5%, although we are up to bid, and when we get those results, we may change that once we know what the dollars look like. Also incorporated within the projections, you remember back in for our 2018 tax levy cycle, we abated $1,750,000 in bonded interest. And then also incorporated in here is $2 million allocated annually over the next 5 years to do that as well. Staffing assumptions, we have 8 additional staff, basically for enrollment changes or additional needs. And that's part of the baseline projection for each year, except for 1920, we have it at 5 since we used 3 from the 18-19 year or the 19-20 year in 18-19. We use the BA6 step 5 for new hires just as a starting point in terms of what that total salary benefit is for each additional FTE. And we also have right now 54 staff members are scheduled to retire between 2019 and 2023. And we have a breakdown here of how many are teachers and how many are unaffiliated staff. In 2023, this is just what we knew as of today. Basically, we'll probably have more coming through because they have until June 1st to put in their retirement notices. So that number may grow in the next few months. So for our operating expenditures, again, here's our budget, about $87 million, and then here's where we're looking at total salary and benefits here, and then also all the other costs, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay. You'll notice here in 2021, you'll see a decrease, and that's because we have a large group of retirees going out in 2020. So we replace them typically with lower paid people. So you'll see a decrease here, and then it starts to level out from there as well. So now we summarize it all here, our base projection model with the assumptions we just went through. And again, this particular assumption has no additional state funding, meaning it's keeping that evidence-based funding amount at $28.6 million level throughout the whole 5 years. So when you look at that and then incorporating these bonded interest abatements, you can see here for projected 1920, we're looking at about, and after the abatements, of about 171,000 surplus, and then our ending fund balance about 38 million, so staying within our fund balance policy of 15 to 25%. Which I think my benches for FFAC will be looking at that policy to see if we need to adjust that. Because we are exceeding that, so we might want to take a look at maybe making that range being a little larger. So then if we move on, you can see for 2021, we're about 400,000 surplus, and then we get into some negative territory here. And again, remember, this is not doing anything with the EBF formula. So even after, if everything did happen exactly this way for the next 5 years, it would be about a $32 million fund balance, about 31% of expenditures. So still well within our policy.
That's with no new money from the state.
That's with no new money from the state. On either side, whether it be categoricals or EBF. Yeah.
Or any local growth.
Right. Well, that's what was in the assumptions,
Right.
which is like the,
Right.
Yeah, the smaller local growth, exactly. So we go ahead and chart this and look at some history of where we were back in 2013 compared to where we're going to go in 2024. So you can see since then we've been doing a pretty decent job of keeping that fund balance within actually exceeding our policy at this point, and even incorporating these abatements also, which is good. And here's just a picture of that, our revenues, our expenditures bar chart, and then just showing that line of where our fund balance and what it looks like. Also just ran another, projection here, if we were to get an additional $2 million added to our base funding minimum, what that would look like. So basically what it does, it adds $2 million to every year. Because once you add it to the base funding minimum or your EDF, it stays there. It doesn't fluctuate. So by adding $2 million just for 1 year in the 1920 year, it adds $2 million here and here and here. So you can see basically the effect of that is really, and that cumulative effect of that is about $10 million over the next 5 years. And again, here's a picture of that showing where we're at, and then it pretty much keeps that line either going up a little bit or fairly flat. Additional considerations that basically that we always want to take a look at is our state budget consideration and the continued financial support of the evidence-based funding. That's obviously key, and we're hoping that they continue to fund it like they say they would, so those districts can get out of adequacy. For the Illinois State Controller, and this was as of February 28th, there was still a backlog of bills of about $7 billion. A couple years ago, that was $14 billion. So it's gotten better, but there's still obviously an issue in terms of unpaid bills at the state level. The assumptions here don't take into consideration any changes in PTEL or the tax cap calculation. There's always been talk about potentially freezing that the tax cap, which would impact us negatively for future revenues on the local side. It's fairly been quiet on that front, just given the new election, new governor, but it's something we want to just keep an eye on. And also the possible PRS pension and having that transferred to local districts for their responsibility. That's something that's been talked about, and I'm sure we'll get some talk downstate as well. It's been talked about for years, they just haven't made any really structured changes to do that. Then also we will be in the process of restructuring our bonds, which in the next board meeting we'll have Raymond James here to go through that. We talked about that as FFAC. So we do want to make sure that we maintain our favorable bond rate interest rates. And that's it.
I have a few questions. Going back to that TIF, the retirement of TIF 1, that was substantial. Our portion of that, does that stay consistent with our general proportion that we've talked about in the past, or?
You mean for when the TIF
when they
retires?
retired TIF 1, we have a certain proportion of that. That would be a substantial amount of money for the district, right?
Well, there's two things. One, what was shown on the screen is the EAV that's going to come back on our tax rolls.
Right.
What we talked about previously is the balance that's in TIF 1 that will be,
Which we didn't show here.
right,
Right.
that'll be distributed to the tax bodies, and that's staying consistent with what our portion is supposed to
Has
be.
been throughout, but we'll fine tune that as it.
Oh, yeah, once
approaches.
we know, yeah.
Right,
It's-
once we know.
Right.
The second question is regarding the state school funding formula, that tier 1 allocation. Is that allocated, is there performance? We've never really discussed it, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to do that, but I think that's based on, there are performance ties to that allocation, are there not?
It's based on student enrollment. So it's based on what the formula does is, or the adequacy is, it takes let's say a prototypical school, and it says, okay, if you're a low-income district, your class sizes should be 15-1. Then it takes all the enrollment of your kids and it puts it in there, and it says, okay, you need X dollars in order to run your district based on the population of your students.
To perform better? In other words, is it given to say this is going to ensure, our giving you money is to ensure that situation changes or gets better?
Well, that's their hope, because there's evidence that shows if you've got a higher IEP kids or higher low income or higher ELL, you need additional dollars to support those students.
Right.
So
And is
really
there
that's the basis.
expectation that is to change, or is there expectation is to continue as long as we have that discrepancy?
It's to continue until we have you mean the actual funding part,
Right.
until you reach an adequacy, because that is in excess of the tier 1. It's usually about 65%. I think in every year that changes because they recalculate everything for every district. So really, to get to the next tier, you need to get that 58% to like 65%. And then to get to the tier 3, you pretty much have to be at 100% adequacy. And tier 4 is something in excess of 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, and then the last question is regarding the key expenditure assumptions that that 1,750,000 that we are
That we abated. Yeah.
abating. That, as I understood, that was waiting for the the final amount for that the 4.10. It may change a little, but that 1,750,000 is going to stay the same.
Yeah.
So
Because what we had to do is actually file an abatement agreement with the county.
right.
And we had to do that before the end of February.
Right. So
Yes.
we were looking at a moving target.
Yeah.
We were trying to hit 0.
Right.
0 rise from last year, and we were trying to shoot for a moving target, so it may vary a little off that 0, but not very much.
Not very much, it shouldn't, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But that 1,750,000 is what we gave to the county to say, do not levy that for the bonded interest. Or
Terrific.
levy that much less.
Thank you very much for doing
And
that.
again, that'll be an annual discussion, decision by the board. Bond and interest abatement.
Right.
And that's why there's 2 million incorporated in here each year to talk about that. And again,
Thank you
that
very
can be
much.
adjusted.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, I got a few questions too. On local property tax, or EAV, let's just say. What Jeff was just talking about with respect to the TIF, I mean, a large chunk of our revenue comes from local properties, not very much from state or federal by comparison.
Mhm.
So we've had a new assessor in DeKalb Township for a little while now, and then of course lately a new city manager and a great deal of change with respect to the TIF, or change going forward at least. So I'm kind of curious, when you talk to the folks at the county, do you have any sense for whether or not the assessors, well, specifically DeKalb Township, but in general, because we're over several townships for the district, do you have any sense for whether the assessors will be changing their methods? Will there be, well, maybe I shouldn't say changing their methods, but just change, let's just leave it at that. And perhaps reevaluating certain properties and whether or not that would have any significant impact, on the ultimate EAV for the district.
It's hard to know. I know this last cycle, there were a lot of tax appeals, meaning that we had a lot of either companies, mostly larger companies, because we only see the ones that are 100,000 or more. If there's going to be a change in EAV of 100,000 or more, we get notified. And then we have our tax attorney look into that for us, and he goes to all the appeal hearings for us and advocates on our behalf to make sure that legitimate, is there a real reason why you need to go from one EAV to another to decrease their EAV amount. So, but it's, kind of hard to know what that assessor is going to do. I know that we're getting close to another, I think they do it every 4 years where they do a reassess. I think we're coming up to that. I can't remember exactly which tax levy year that is. So that's when they are basically supposed to touch every property and relook at it and reassess it and look at what the market is doing.
Yeah, so the quadrennial reassessment every 4 years,
Yeah.
that's fairly standard.
Yeah.
But I was looking, when I see a news article, for instance, in the paper about a particular property, I'll usually look at the website, the county's website, and take a look at the EAV and how it's calculated. So not the property card, you have to go to the assessor's office for that. But I followed farm properties for quite some time, 10 years or more, 20 years probably. And lately I started looking at apartments and commercial properties in DeKalb in particular, or maybe Sycamore. And sometimes I see some like, wow, really? That kind of thing, and I wondered whether or not, if things changed, it would make a big difference either up or down, either to the district.
Yeah, I guess it's, it's hard to know because there's so many properties out there. And I've looked at some of those too, where you're looking at one and you want to see what the EAVs look like. But when you're looking even online at that, they show maybe a sales price for an entire piece of property, but they say, well, there's other parcels attached to it. So it's kind of hard to know if that sales price is just for that parcel or is it for a whole group of parcels.
Yeah, I mean, because there is now that the numbers are going up rather than down as they did during the recession. If there are major errors, it would be nice to know if we could somehow know whether the ultimate number at the end, which is what you've been showing us, will remain more or less the same, plus CPI or something,
Yeah.
You know, or whether there could be some major shakeups, you know, if there are, if it turns out that there are a number of incorrect assessments countywide.
And I know here in 2017 that was occurring, so, because there wasn't a lot of new growth, real new growth, I mean
Right.
rooftops, but that was a year where they did do some adjustments to some properties, so we got the benefit of that here in the 2017 year, so they do look at those.
Well, and I can share, it's not real popular for us to chase,
Individual.
well, to make appeals on individual properties.
Yeah, but I've looked at it closely enough, well before I was on board. This is my own interest. I looked at it close enough to realize, from my perspective, that there were some significant errors in some cases. But I don't know whether it would change the ultimate number, you know, the one that matters to us as a board.
It would, you know, change the tax rate, it really affects, the EAV here, not necessarily the new growth, but the total EAV is what drives the tax rate.
Right.
So, you know, the higher EAV, the tax rate goes down.
And of course,
And it gets
it's
spread
equalized
amongst
at the county level. You know, each assessor puts in, you know, their belief of what it is, and then the county chief assessment officer can change it. And then, of course, it's finalized by the state.
Yeah. and the
So
board
there's a
review.
couple of potential changes there, but because there's a lot of flux, I guess is what I'm thinking, you know, we're back to a strong economy. You know, we're seeing differences in TIF and you know, those properties coming online and surplus is over, that's on, I think, I believe more or less. You know, and in particular, a new assessor in DeKalb Township, where most of the value for the
Yeah.
district lies.
Yes.
You know, these are things that I look at and say, wow, you know, could we be in for a surprise, either good or bad? Or will it be just kind of much as it's been? That's what I'm kind of curious.
Good to-
It's too
Yeah.
early maybe to say.
Yeah, I think
It
it
really
is.
depends on the assessor.
Yeah, sure does. Sure does. Okay, so, thank you. So a couple of other questions. On the evidence-based funding, it started in 17-18, right?
Yes,
Okay, so that was our base for the next year.
right.
What happens, and I don't know whether to ask you or Jamie, what happens about restrictions on spending that evidence-based money? Right, I think if I remember right, there were no restrictions in the beginning, but there will be.
There's technically no restrictions, but we do have, this first year in 17, or for actually 18, 19, we did have to submit a spending plan, which was very general and flexible, meaning we're gonna spend it to, on specific student populations, those types of things. It really didn't require us to put a dollar amount to anything, but they did indicate to us, as the years go on with this, you're gonna have to show how you're spending those dollars.
So when does that kick in?
That's a good question.
Nobody
Yes,
knows.
nobody knows, but we're getting ready for, as they go through each of these spending plans in each of the years, because I think this 17, 18 year, there was no time. We didn't know what we were getting until May of 18. And even 18, 19, when they came out with that, they didn't give us a whole lot of time to react. So, but they did say that, yeah, as the years go on, it's gonna get, not, let's just not say restrictive, but there's gonna be more reporting requirements in terms of how these dollars are being spent.
Yeah, which to me means we have to be more careful when we budget as to how much we're putting toward a particular purpose, because we might be restricted. It's a fairly large chunk of money, we might be restricted in that spending.
Right.
Are you talking about the 2.8 there, the tier one allocation
Yeah.
money? I mean, as far as restrictions on how we spend it?
Yes.
And we're hearing, we continue to hear whispers that that's coming, but nobody at any conferences that we attended have said on this date or expected in this year. But again, it's coming.
Can it be retroactive? In other words, can we
No,
then
I
say,
don't think
No,
so,
they
no.
you can't say have spent it and then say, oh, we weren't supposed to spend it in that particular way?
I would highly doubt it, no, I don't think that's.
Even in the state of Illinois?
I don't think so.
Once we get it, we bank it, we're not giving it back.
So our fund balance is made up in part of that money that
Sure.
comes now from EDF.
Yeah.
So we might be smart to consider, when FFAC is doing a rundown on the range of the fund balance, to consider, well, should we spend some of this money now on something that we might not be able to spend it on, you know, the next year or the year thereafter?
Right.
Less restrictions, more flexibility. for us.
Right, exactly. And taking into consideration those bonded interest rates.
Yeah. And then finally, the last question, the state pension situation, I don't think that was shown on your state,
That was just
Last
another
year, last page.
consideration,
It was under a few things I was watching.
yeah. Right here,
okay.
there we go.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, always have it on their radar.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the comptroller, you said it went down from 14 billion to 7.8 billion.
So a
So
lot
what?
of billions.
So what? It's not much compared to the pension deficit.
Yeah.
That's enormous. And that could have repercussions back through all the rest of these things.
I don't want to add to the Jeff Carey question
Yeah, go
session,
ahead.
but that abatement, that's 1,750,000, that was to single families, that was, we did
Across
use-
the whole tax.
right,
base.
someone
'cause
brought
we-
that up,
Yeah, because we can't say, oh, well, we'll give it to this one or this one.
right,
And when we're looking
so
at.
that was
everything-
across the board,
Yes.
straight across the board,
across
right,
the
all
board.
taxing bodies, all,
Yeah.
everything, okay, good.
Yep.
Just wanted to make clear that, somebody brought that up to me, and I didn't have an answer for that.
Okay, no,
So now
it's
I
in,
do.
yeah, it's in totality.
Thank you very much.
Other questions for Cindy?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next, we have the non-business consent agenda. That the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through D. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
One point, please.
Yeah, Howard?
On the approval of the minutes of the meeting, the last meeting, we had 2/17, 2/19. We had a discussion at the end of it. The minutes did not, in my opinion, accurately reflect the content of that discussion. And I asked Melissa to review that. She's agreed to do that, but the minutes might change at the next meeting. I'm talking about the discussion in regard to a policy change regarding how the president makes appointments. And I found, after reading the minutes and then reviewing the video, that it didn't match up very well, so I've asked for help, and that should be taken care of by the next meeting. Okay.
And approve it next time.
Melissa, what would you recommend we do?
Well, usually I think they say that minutes are approved pending these changes. You can approve these minutes and then we'll reflect in the next minutes, hours, corrections.
And are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, great. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Gary Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez.
No.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Next, we have the business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the business consent agenda items A through B.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeff Albrecht.
Yes.
Gary Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Next, we have business and finance, request to bid utilities. And this is Cindy Carpenter and Tammy Carson. I should say natural gas and electric.
So we're asking the board to start the process to bid our natural gas and electric. We're coming to the end of a 2-year contract that ends on June 30th of 2019. In the past, we've worked with American Energy Analysis to help us with that process, although that person has retired, so we've been doing it in-house. The last time we did it was in-house, and Tammy took care of that and did a fine job, so we're gonna ask for her services again in doing that. Also, we don't use a broker. We work directly with the suppliers, because obviously using a broker could cost additional dollars, so we like to do it direct and save a few dollars there. So we're asking permission to start that bid process. This is informational for this meeting, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting for action.
Questions on the
Yes. It seems that brokers that I hear from as just a consumer promise much better prices than the supplier. I expect that may be false, and maybe that is what you're looking at there. But why not, if you're going out for bids, include some, if they're not a better price, then we don't go with it.
Well, what the broker does is they basically go out to bid to the same suppliers that we would. So it's not like the broker is the supplier. The broker is really just the middle person that would put you in contact with this supplier. And we would be doing the exact same thing. So they would be giving us pricing on the same suppliers that we would be going out to. So it'd be redundant, I guess, if that makes sense.
I had a similar question to Howard's, and that is with respect to the electricity. In Calvin, most municipalities have gone and gotten their own contracted rate. How do we compare? How do your results, County talks to them? How does that rate that we get for our work directly with suppliers turn out as compared to what the city has negotiated?
That's a good question. We'd have to get some information on that. I'm not-
Yeah, I've always wondered, I mean, I personally have always been able to do better directly. I'm not in town, so I don't have the advantage. I guess maybe it's an advantage. But I'm curious, if the city has enough leverage, I don't know, who's the biggest user of electricity, right? I mean,
Can't imagine that we are.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we're too large, other buildings.
Anyway,
But no, I'm
just
not
curious.
sure, to be honest, I'm not sure how we compare with, other contracts.
I would say, one thing we discussed was the ability to lock in rates once we do have a contract with a specific vendor. And so at that time, we're choosing to lock in a rate so we don't have that risk of fluctuation risk. So the rates that are out there, I don't think are differing between us and the city. It's a matter of when we choose or choose not to lock in for what extended time.
Other questions? Okay, do we have a consensus to bring back the request bid, natural gas and electric?
Yes.
Next, we have bid results of the request for proposal for minibuses. This is an action item. That the Board of Education approve administration to accept the bid submitted by Midwest Transit Equipment for a 4-year lease to return agreement for 3 2008 Chevy Starcraft minibuses and trading in our 2 current minibuses. Do we have a motion?
Discussion, yes. I so move.
Okay,
Second.
okay, discussion?
I wanted to ask Tammy a question on this. Tammy, did you notice much difference between the bid results or the bidders as far as, I mean, there are obviously going to be differences. Was this substantially lower, or does anything stand out as far as this particular bidder, or was the lowest bidder, I'm assuming?
Actually, this has been managed by Cindy
Okay.
and our mayor.
Yeah,
So
so we actually did a lot of leverage on this one, but what we did is we went out to get pricing on the 3 minibuses. We had 2 vendors that came and gave us bids. Southern Bus Mobility and Midwest Transit Equipment, and we were looking to, for a 4-year lease, and then after the 4-year lease to return those buses back to them, and then so we can keep that fleet of 3 refreshed, because our original buses we had were 2010, and we've had them since. We've had them in 2011 actually, and they're just breaking down constantly. And so what we'd like to do is do a 4-year, more of a lease type of arrangement, and then that way we'll get new buses every 4 years. And what the Midwest Transit has is 3 2018 Chevy Starcraft, which are very similar to what we have right now, with some fairly decent, I don't know if anybody got a chance to look at some of the detail, but there's some very pretty decent, not like tripped out type of things, but, some good standards, and he's taken a look at them too, and he likes the looks of those, and they're a little bit larger, some more headroom, some luggage racks, those types of things, so it makes it a little easier to take the kids around. So the annual lease payments for the 3 of them is $22,651, which is the lesser of the 3 options. And so the total for 4 years is $90,600.
And I have one additional question. You looked at it carefully as far as it's been my experience on leasing that where they kill you is your allowance, your allocation of miles, and you went over that pretty detailed as far as figuring out how many we need and how many they're giving us, correct?
Yes, we're good. Actually, that particular lease gives us 15,000 miles a year, where the other vendor was 12,000 a year.
Right.
So we have a little wiggle room, and then also we would just make sure that those vehicles get managed, meaning keeping track of those miles, and then making sure, if this one's getting a little high, okay, let's use this one. So that would be part of that
And
process.
it seems like from I was looking at on the old vehicles, we were about 10, maybe 11.
Yeah, about
or
11,
thereabouts.
12,000.
So we have some leeway there as far as that 15.
Yeah.
50. Thank you so much.
Cindy, two of the vendors provided a bus that was called Starcraft, specifically what we asked for in the request for bid. One of them provided another model.
Oh, the Trans-Tech.
Trans-Tech.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure, what was the reason for rejecting the Trans-Tech? It looked like it might be a better price.
It was a better price if you look at the price of just the vehicle, but it didn't have as many of the options. The 2018, the one we're looking at, the Starcraft, had some better, it had a backup camera, it had a couple other options that were more favorable. It had a larger horsepower, it had a larger wheelbase, so a little more stability, although they're both safe vehicles, because they're called, they're all qualified from the Illinois State Board of Education as safe vehicles. Either one of those models would be safe, but it does have a bigger wheelbase. It had larger interior headroom, it had a larger length. So when we look at when we dig into the details of the options, that particular model had more options at a reasonable price.
Are any of the vehicles equipped for accessibility, for handicap accessibility?
No, they're not. If we did have to transport, we would probably use First Student in those cases because they have those vehicles. They have wheelbase or wheelchair accessible vehicles.
Okay, so we do have an arrangement that will
Oh,
cover
yeah.
any need.
If we did have
If we
that
were
need,
transporting any athletic teams that need wheelchair accessible,
Yeah. we would use
accessibility,
First,
we would use First Student.
because they have a number of those.
Thank you.
Question about maintenance. So we're going to lease, right now we own,
Mhm.
we're going to lease. What is our responsibility for maintenance?
Well, it's just like a car lease. We still have to put, oil changes and keep up the maintenance. These do have warranties on them, 3-year warranties for the chassis and then 5-year drivetrain warranties. So, we've had to put in new engines with these other older ones, so we won't have to do that, obviously, so.
But if you have a 3-year warranty and a 4-year lease, what happens?
Well, then
Pays.
it's just like a car, you're paying, depending on
So
what.
we would pay
It's on
something.
Well,
chassis, not
that's on
drivetrain.
the chassis, that's on just, on the inside, the chassis, the drivetrain, the transmission, the engine, that's 5 years.
That's the title.
Yes.
Okay.
Just like a typical car.
Okay.
And that's a good range.
Mhm.
Well,
We need a roll call, please.
You just like that.
Chair Millette,
Yes.
Secretary Report,
Yes.
Valerie Van Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Zolman,
you can abstain. I'm just
Troy
kidding.
Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Halter.
Yes.
Okay, next we have review of bid results and funding sources, summer projects, and this is an informational item.
So as you know, back in November, I brought forth proposals regarding summer projects for 2019, and we talked extensively about some of the projects that had to be delivered over the last several years and some budget adjustments that had been done in the operations and maintenance budget. And at the time, the decision was made to move forward with several bid projects that are listed in here, which include the asphalt, concrete and seal coating at 3 buildings for seal coating and all the buildings for the asphalt concrete. Flooring replacements at Lincoln and Jefferson, which and also includes the gym flooring at Founders. HVAC improvements at Huntley, tennis courts resurfacing at the high school, and roof replacements at Lincoln and Little John. If you recall, back in November, when we talked about funding for these projects, we did talk about how 4 years ago, the operations and maintenance budget was reduced by a net $300,000 to accommodate some of the cost of the Chromebook rollout at that time. In addition, we also did a modified cleaning schedule, which had a $200,000 savings that the district was able to obtain. In addition, there's some other funding that is available through Fund 60, which is that was part of our capital project funds. And so with all of those funds, which are itemized in here, we do have a proposal regarding the bid results. And so it kind of looks like a long list of agenda items for tonight, but we figured the best way to go through this would be to just talk about the funding and the projects informationally in the bid results, and then give you the opportunity to vote separately on each of the projects in the different phases with alternates. So
So you're gonna go through these D, E, you're gonna go through each one of them separately.
I will go through each one of them separately right now, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions you have, and then you will vote on each of them separately in the order they are in the agenda.
It'll make more sense if we talk about everything that's proposed and then come back and vote on each one individually.
Okay.
So you have the opportunity to see the whole picture, and then be able to vote on each of them separately. So a couple of the documents that I included in the first agenda item were the list of the summer projects and the funding analysis. Again, the funding analysis is what I just went over regarding the $300,000 reduction to $200,000 savings. There is 1 million available in Fund 60, and then our 2 years of capital budget that are available. In addition, I do want to remind the board of the construction grant funds that were put into reserve back in 2014, I believe, 13, 14. The decision was made at that time to put 10 million into working cash, and that funding is still there, and could be used as a potential towards these projects. Back in that time, we talked that these are things that eventually have to be done. We can't go forever without replacing carpets and roofs and looking at air conditioning improvements and things. So I'd like to start that plan and start rolling some of those projects out on an annual basis, look at those type of improvements that have kind of been not at the top of the list over the last few years. And so we are going to be doing the master facility plan. If you recall, that was also something back in November we discussed. And that we have the preliminary results already from the architect for the master facility plan, which will give us a projection for the next 5 years of projects that may need to be considered. But that does now what I take as the preliminary results from the architect and kind of divide them out. So we divide them by type of project, by building, by fund source, and those type of that information that I would then bring forth to you at a later date. But for this year, obviously, we need to move forward with making some decisions because contracts do need to get out to contractors so we can commit and be ready to start our summer with the projects that need to be done. The funding analysis report that was included also includes a breakdown, not just of operations and maintenance, but life safety. The roof projects would come out of our life safety budget, so those come out of a different fund. I also included 2 other result reports, and one of them is budget versus all of the bids. So what we expected the projects to come in at prior to the bidding process, as well as potentially some adjustments that were made along the way. And what those actual bid results came in. So budget versus all bid results. And then the second document I included in that same format was budget versus the ones that I'm recommending we accept tonight and approve tonight versus the ones that I'm recommending we reject tonight. So you can see how much these potentially cost based on the acceptance or rejection of each of the bids that I'm bringing forward. Can I answer any questions regarding the funding or the budget?
Tammy, you said that 10 million from the construction grant amount was put into working cash. Is that the same as our fund balance?
Yeah, that's
Okay, it's in the fund balance.
Yeah, that's
That's what I
part of our
thought.
operating, what we just looked at.
Right.
That's inclusive, yes.
Okay, so when FFIC looks at that range for that fund balance ratio,
Yep.
then this is going to have to be considered. That's a large chunk of that $40 million.
Mhm.
Okay. But yes, I do remember back in the day when that was a decision to be made. Set that aside, if you will, rather than spend it at that point in time.
Mhm.
Okay. As long as everybody knows that 10 million is in the fund balance, not in some separate
Not an
additional
additional,
fund.
it's within there.
Yeah,
We have to
okay.
come on the operating.
And the bids that I am recommending moving forward tonight with contingency and architect and engineering fees come in at just under $1.8 million for total. And as shown in the funding analysis that was included, we have the 1.6 million between just the capital and the Fund 60. And then we have 1.2 in life safety, but again, those are specifically for roofs. So there is a significant portion that could be funded through this without dipping too much into the 10 million, if even necessary. Majority of our projects, I would say probably 98% of our projects do not use the 10% contingency fund, so that's a significant dollar in itself, being at $150,000 of this that we may not have to, it's all kind of uncertain.
So you're saying that the bulk of this was projected expenses, we have already projected those expenses, does not exceed them very much.
Based on our current standings as the budget stands today, because obviously I am considering the 2018-19 budget year also in this calculation, because summer projects do start. Actually, HVAC could start as early as sometime in May. And so some of the project expenditures will be expensed out in this fiscal year, in May and June. Especially since our summer is pretty much over by the end of July when it comes to summer projects. We only have 1 month in the next fiscal year.
Let's talk about the projects.
Okay. The first project I'm bringing forward is the flooring project. To refresh your memory, what this is to replace all of the flooring in the classrooms and offices at Lincoln Elementary, some small offices at Jefferson Elementary, and then the base bid 2 is the gym floor replacement at Founders Elementary. This will be the gym.
Quick time out,
I'm sorry.
just so board president can keep everybody where we're at.
Sorry, let me read the action item and then we'll
You bet.
start. Okay. So first we have bid results, flooring replacement, Lincoln, Jefferson, and Founders. This is an action item. That the Board of Education approve base bid number 1 for the Lincoln and Jefferson flooring replacement project for the replacement of specified flooring to carpet land from Rockford, Illinois in the amount of $132,500 in addition to funding needed for moisture mitigation if needed. Approve base bid number 2 for the Founders flooring replacement project for the replacement of the gym flooring to Spec Athletic, Inc. from Plainfield, Illinois, in the amount of $85,617, in addition to funding needed for moisture mitigation and concrete floor leveling if needed, and approve the rejection of bid number 3. Do we have a motion?
Discussion.
Yep.
So
Okay.
All right.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Tammy.
All right, so the flooring again is classrooms and offices at Lincoln, some small offices at Jefferson Elementary that have been tripping hazard because the carpet is starting to bubble up. And then the base bid number 2 is the Founders Gym floor replacement. We can, just on understanding, base bids can be approved or rejected individually. And we get into a different scenario when there's alternate bids. So any of these 3 can be approved either way.
as I recall, that Founders floor originally was an artificial surface, not a, did we replace that at some point or another with wood? Is it wood?
No, this is the cafeteria gym floor, which
Right.
is furthest to the west of the
The
building.
the relatively new.
The
gym
relatively
floor on
new
the
gym.
north side,
It is
right.
a rubber gym floor. It was a
Right.
poured rubber, which is very challenging with cafeteria tables
Right,
because it's a softer surface. So we are recommending a surface that does accommodate cafeteria tables as well as can serve as a gym floor.
right. So it's a better choice for the multi-application that we currently use it for.
Absolutely, and there's significant damage on that floor that we've been patching over the years. We originally planned to replace that floor with some TIP funding that we had available through the city, and unfortunately those funds had to be diverted to the tower that had to replace
Right, I
because of
remember
the
that.
structural issues.
I have one additional, just a quick question. This moisture stuff that they talk about, the outline, what we're voting on, that moisture, is that additional, if they find moisture, or if they find problems with the concrete, it will be additional money? Any kind of, we don't have any idea what that'll be.
We don't have a projection.
So we're
No.
voting on their ability to make that decision and your ability to guide them and direct them in that.
There will be specific testing done once the current floor is removed, and it is done throughout the floor, and obviously a gym floor is a very large space.
Right.
So it's not just done in one space, and then the mitigation is based on the areas that need to be mitigated, not necessarily the entire.
And when we vote for this, we are giving you that discretion.
Yes.
But we don't know what percentage it is of the total.
Well, but if it came if it came back to where it's a ridiculous number, then we would have to bring that back to the board and say, we've run into a problem.
So,
Because when we vote, we vote to allocate the amount that's here in the action item.
And what's in the bid?
But we're not voting for the mitigation cost if that's required. Do we have to bring that back?
No, you're actually approving that the mitigation can be done. One thing to keep in mind with change orders, typically if a changeover order is over, I believe it's 10% of the project cost, it comes back to the board for approval. This would in turn potentially be a change order,
so it's 10% and under.
I believe.
Yeah, so
that's-
it's like a not to exceed. I mean, that's what I'd be comfortable with,
Right.
not just
As long as that
some pie in the
understanding
sky,
is
we
in
have no
place.
idea.
I'm good with the 10% or under.
One thing I do want y'all to keep in mind is this floor will need to be replaced regardless
Right.
of the situation. And it's not going to improve if we wait. Whenever this floor is going to be replaced, if there's moisture mitigation necessary, the funding will have to be put forth. And the current surface is not at a level that
So if
is,
it's over 10%, we have to bring
we'll
it back.
bring it back.
Right. But that's the understanding I'm working with. Thank you.
Other questions? No?
And can you briefly describe the materials in the 3 different locations? You mentioned carpet, and you mentioned something to replace a gym floor.
Sure. The classrooms will be replaced with LVT, which is luxury vinyl tile, which does not require strip and wax. It's a very low maintenance tile that's in the majority of our replacement projects where we're putting in tile. Those are the classrooms at Lincoln. The offices or smaller spaces at Lincoln, including Jefferson small spaces, will be 2x2 carpet flooring. And then the gym flooring is it's a rolled gym floor, not a poured floor. That is it's not a wood floor. It is currently what we used at Tyler Elementary. If you're looking for something similar, it's similar to the product that was used at Tyler Elementary because that's also a multi-purpose room that has gym tables as well as PE classes helping. You're welcome.
It's a rolled product, is it cemented at the seams or something? How do they join, or do they need to join? It's not a monstrous wide roll, is it? They must have.
No, it's several pieces that are brought in, and I
You
honestly,
don't know whether it's
Carrie
heat
can't.
sealed or. heat
I'm not
sealed.
sure the process they use. Again, we had this done at Tyler in 2014.
What sort of warranty do they have?
I would have to look that up, Carrie. I don't have that information
But-
in my hands.
It resists scraping.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's a big part of this.
Absolutely, and we've been
Because
very
of those
happy with the
tables.
Tyler floor since
Yeah.
it was installed in
Yeah,
Fort.
that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah,
right?
we have had no repairs
Do they
or
have this-
anything brought forth at Tyler.
At Tyler, do they have tables like that?
Yes,
Okay, so it's a very similar application.
correct.
We have some experience with it.
Yes, we do, and there have been no repairs done at Tyler since.
Great.
Okay.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Ellerton Hernandez,
Yes.
Laura Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Graham Malat,
Yes,
Victoria Newport.
Yes. Next, we have the bid results for roof replacement. This is an action item. That the Board of Education approved base bid number 1 for the Lincoln roof replacement to H.C. Anderson from Rockton, Illinois, in the amount of $440,000, $655 to approve base bid number 2 for the Little John roof replacement project designated roof from Rockford, Illinois, in the amount of $309,000, and approve rejection of bid number 3. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
With discussion.
Discussion?
What kind of roof is that on Little John? Or kind of roof are we describing here? Is it rubberized, is it flat? It's a flat roof, correct?
It's a flat roof, it's a rubber membrane that is put, it is exactly what we've been putting in all of our other buildings throughout the district. It's a flat
Right.
rubber.
Same supplier? Different supplier here than other projects that
When
we've
you're
used?
saying supplier, you mean supplier
Have we used this
installer?
supplier
The
before?
installer?
Yes. installer.
I personally do not have experience with H.C. Anderson. Our architect does and speaks highly of them. Distinctive Roofing has done some of our projects in past years.
Great, thank you.
Other question? Okay, roll call, please.
Laura Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Alburn,
Yes.
Gary Malett,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez.
Yes.
Next, we have bid results district pavement replacement, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve base bid number 3 for district pavement repairs to Elliott Wood of DeKalb, Illinois, in the amount of $160,000. Approve the rejection of base bid number 1 for the DHS, CRMS, and HMS seal coating project. Approve the rejection of base bid number 2 for the CRMS front courtyard replacement project, and approve the rejection of the bid number 4 for the combined bid. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Okay. With this project, I'll start out with base bid 1 with the seal coating. We only had one bidder come through on this, as it's significantly higher than the budgeted amount and what we still feel is an appropriate budgeted amount. I'm already working with our architect to rebid just seal coating for the high school Rosette and Huntley, because I do feel strongly that we need to move forward and get into a rolling schedule of getting our parking lot seal coated on an every 3-year basis.
We feel like it kind of got buried in the bid
And the
package
rest of it.
and got missed by those who would just bid parking lots. So we're going to ask the board to rebid it.
Base bid number 2, the courtyard at Clinton and Rosette, we did bid out separately in hopes that we would come to closer to our projected, but there were some changes that were needed to be made based on some engineering concerns in regards to which sidewalks needed to be included in this project. We estimated this closer to $45,000. It came in at $80,000. And at this time, we don't feel it is a project we should move forward with based on our budget. And then the other one that I am recommending we move forward with is base bid number 3. That's some pavement repairs that are throughout the district. Most of them are safety hazards, or the area is getting away from us. And if we do not get some attention, get some repairs done on the concrete, that we will, or an asphalt, that we could potentially have some significant costs down the road or potential closures because of safety.
Questions for Tammy? All right, roll call, please.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Alburn,
Yes.
Gary Malett,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez,
Yes.
Warren Southern.
Thanks for keeping an eye on that.
Next, we have bid results, tennis court resurfacing. This is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the base bid for the DHS tennis court resurfacing to American Seal Coating of Indiana from Michigan City, Indiana, in the amount of $67,000, in addition to funding needed to repair structural cracks. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Upon the repair of the tennis court, will they also repaint it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's a complete resurfacing,
They do it
so
all.
they do it all. They do it all, yes. And I will make note, we looked at repairing the cracks last summer because they were starting to become significant, and obviously our tennis team competes out there at the high school. And the cracks were at a point last year where it even wasn't worth putting the money into it last year because of resurfacing was becoming necessary. And the life of a project like this is typically 7 years, and now we're at year 8.
Tammy, no bids from an inside Illinois company?
We invited several, as listed in here, and get my numbers here. Because we do send out invitations to the ones that our architect works regularly with, as well as ones that we have worked with in the past. 3 came back with bid packages, but 1 was not open at returns because it did not meet the requirements of the bid package.
And I'm curious on these. When you seal cracks, the heat sealing is the only way to go here. And they must go through the process there must be some sort of process. Who's looking over that to make sure that obviously with a tennis court, that heat sealing usually leaves a ridge, or there's ridges or aspects of it. So it must be there's some minutia involved in doing that. It's just, I'm just curious, is that something the architect looks at or you look at?
Oh,
or
no,
who?
definitely the architect, I'm no expert in this by any means.
Right,
Our architect monitors our projects throughout all of these projects.
and that's figured in the price.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then we meet weekly on the majority of these projects to make sure if there's any concerns brought forth, we're addressing it immediately before. And before like the next stage of like the cracks will get filled in, they will be inspected and approved before the resurfacing happens. And before the painting happens, the resurfacing will be inspected and approved. So there is definitely a process that's in place.
Tennis court filling is a complex project. I mean, it has to be very smooth and good. It's a challenging thing to get it right and get it smooth. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Tim?
Is there any kind of warranty with this work that they're performing?
There's always a 1-year warranty that comes on any of our construction projects. And so we always keep a very close eye going into this, and especially as our teams are out there. But the first year, especially as we get close to the end of the first year, we're definitely doing additional inspections to make sure if there's a need to bring them back before that window expires.
When working on a tennis court or any kind of very flat surface like that, there's usually some sort of a substrate that's been pressed flat first. And is there any possibility, based on the existing cracks, that there is any damage to the substrate, whether it be sand or stone or whatever? What's underneath there, and is it flat enough to believe that 8 years from now, we're not going to be looking at further repair?
Well, I would have guessed in 8 years I will have further repairs, because that is kind of the likelihood. But in regards to that, that's where I do bring in the experts in the architectural firm to entrust their judgment, and that that's what we are paying them for, to ensure what they are putting in the bid specs, their testing, their inspecting is meeting the level, and that we have qualified individuals to.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Steph Green,
Yes.
Pierre Millet,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Penny Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Okay, next we have bid results, HVAC improvements at Huntley Middle School. That the Board of Education approved base bid number 1 for Huntley Middle School HVAC improvements to mechanical Inc. from Freeport, Illinois for the mechanical work to add air conditioning to a total of 9 classrooms in the amount of $562,500. Approve alternate bid number 1 for Huntley Middle School HVAC improvements to Mechanical Inc. from Freeport, Illinois for the mechanical work to add air conditioning to HMS Media Center in the amount of $146,000. Approve alternate bid number 2 for Huntley Middle School HVAC improvements to Mechanical Inc. from Freeport, Illinois for the mechanical work to add air conditioning to the HMS Auditorium in the amount of $240,000. Approve alternate bid number 3 for Huntley Middle School HVAC improvements to Mechanical Inc. from Freeport, Illinois for the mechanical work to add air conditioning to the HMS second floor classrooms in the amount of $108,000. Do we have a motion?
Second. Reluctantly.
Discussion?
So Tammy,
A mouthful.
it says alternate bid 1, 2, and 3, all of them were over the projected costs. So our architect and engineering firm goes out and surveys the situation, right? Those are the guys, I suppose, that put forward a projected cost, is that right?
They do. We also bid the majority of these projects out in 2017, and I think it was also 2014 or 15. So we did have some pretty good ideas at that point of where the bids were coming in at, but it's never 100% accurate.
But I'm just kind of curious for 3 bids, similar work, same engineering firm doing the original survey. Is it just that it was earlier done? I mean, that we're talking about something a couple years later that was first looked at a while ago? I mean, how can they be off on three different bids by not a huge amount, but a significant amount?
We did use the bid results from 17 and then did an increase based on, 2 years later. At that point in 17, it was a larger project because there were many other alternates included, such as kitchen, cafeteria, There's actually even some other base bids of some schools which were accepted at that time. So potentially, some of the bidders may have come in at a lower amount, thinking they might get the entire project, which was a significantly higher project. Also, there's always changes that we potentially do based on, what projects are, what equipment is out there, and there could have been changes to some of the equipment, which then.
Okay, so over a couple of years or whatever it's been, there were a number of different potential changes.
We still reevaluated all of the drawings in that. It wasn't just take it out and rebid as is. Our engineer and architect did go through all those, and there were some tweaks made to those based on some things we've learned over the last couple of years with our project.
So it's not exactly apples to apples.
It's never apples to apples.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Chair Malak,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valentina Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Tallman,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Hoffman.
Yes. All right, can I ask a quick question before we?
Yeah, go ahead.
Tammy, have you guys in the past talked about, I think there may have been some discussion years ago, about extending the parking lot over at Jefferson?
Yes, we actually looked at that as early as last year, if I remember correctly, and looked at some options of extending the current parking lot for staff and visitor parking,
Yeah,
as well as looking at another option where additional parking could be made off of, help me out, is it Royal, the north?
You guys said there was only like six, wasn't it? You said there was like six additional, like it was needed for 6 additional employees, correct?
When we figured out how many employees were in that building that didn't have, if every employee was there, then
Yeah.
yes, it wasn't a significant amount of space based on the cost projections.
and also, is there a chance we can get a cost on what it would be to put another street light at the north end of that parking lot? I mean, I go through there every morning, and it's tremendously dark back there.
We should can.
Just-
And we are looking at exterior lighting improvements throughout the district with the ComEd rebates that are available. But we definitely, is one of those on the list is the exterior lighting at Jefferson.
All right.
We have this,
So with that, the meeting will be adjourned. All in favor?
Yeah.
Sorry, I like to talk about it.